Today we're going to be talking about 8 traits of an elite wide receiver. Now, first trait of an elite wide receiver, you guys, is they can run the difficult routes versus the difficult and awkward press coverage look. So this is an example of A.J. Brown here, and he is going to be running a slant route versus a DB who is lined up inside shade press. So when we have a DB who's lined up inside shade press pre-snap, what we were looking for as a wide receiver is we were trying to pay attention to his leverage and then the distance he has from me. So his leverage is inside shade, and then he's right up on the line of scrimmage. So that tells me he doesn't want us to run a slant, a drag, anything over the middle. So as a wide receiver, if I have to run my slant, I got to come up with a release. And the release that he uses here is something called a diamond release. A diamond release is where you attack this DB's outside shoulder and his outside hip for 3 steps. And the goal is to make him think you are running a vertical route to flip his hips. So we're going to play this clip. So he comes off, 3 hard steps, gets that DB to flip his hips, and then is able to throw him by. So the key on this move is that throw by move, right? So you take those first 3 steps outside, and then as soon as you get that DB to flip, we were putting that hand on the back of his shoulder, the back of his hip, swatting him and slipping underneath. Now I can maintain spacing, because if we go back to the beginning of this clip, this DB right here, inside shade, if we just try to force it, he's going to get hands and reroute me to the inside. Imagine if I have a slot receiver running a slant or a slot receiver running a flat. I can't end up into him. So elite wide receivers, you guys, know how to run the difficult routes versus the difficult press coverage looks. Now also, fellas, in 2025, we're going to be coming out to 15 different cities across the U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. This weekend, we were in San Francisco, California. That camp was completely sold out. This next weekend, we'll be coming out to Orlando, Florida. That camp is also completely sold out. But then we'll be heading out to Phoenix, Arizona, Charlotte, North Carolina, Austin, Texas. Those 3 camps, you guys, have about 3 spots left remaining. All of these camps will sell out probably within the next 2 months because we limit spots. We don't just let everybody show up, so each athlete can get individualized training and coaching. So make sure you take advantage of these camps being available because they will fill up. And then we're coming out to Austin, Texas, Las Vegas, Nevada, Seattle, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, Newark, New Jersey, Birmingham, Alabama, Houston, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles, you guys. So again, very first link in that description below. We'd love to have you out. Now, the next trait of an elite wide receiver, you guys, is they know how to close space versus a coverage called catch technique. So there's 3 types of man coverage that a DB will play you. He will play press man right up on the ball, which was the last example we saw with A.J. Brown. He will play off man about maybe 7 to 8 yards off, still man coverage, and then he'll play catch man, which is about 2 to 3. So the reason why they do that, you guys, is because they want us to have to just force our route so they can get hands and catch us, right? So what he's hoping here, Adam Thielen's going to be running a dig route. What he's hoping is that Thielen just tries to run away from him so he could get hands, knock him off of his route path, and disrupt the timing with the quarterback. Now, as a receiver, we know he's inside shade or inside shade catch, inside shade coverage. So we know he's trying to take away the inside route. If I have to run my dig, I can't just force the dig like we talked about in the last clip. I'd want to attack him inside and then take that outside release. My goal is to try to stack over the top of him to give him some type of move, right? I can't just force it. Now, this DB with this space, we can't just give him a move, because if I just give him a move, he's going to be able to cut me off. I have to close this distance right here, then give him a move, and then work up into my restack of the route. I will not be able to restack him if I don't close space. If I give him a move, he moves, but then he's got that angle, or he's got that yard of space, he can easily cut off my angle. So we'll play this clip full speed. So you see Thielen closes the space, then gives him a move, and you see how he's able to swat the hands to get back over the top and win on this catch. So if we restart this, so we go back to the top, if he gives this move, so when he comes up and he paused right there, so when he pauses there, you see how he's over the top of this DB. He's able to get there because when he closes that space, he knows the only hand you got to beat when we close the space is the hand that will prevent the release that you're trying to take. So he's trying to take the outside release. I got to beat that DB's outside hand. So let's close the space, bring the line of scrimmage to him, give him a move, and let's have the concept of beating that outside hand. If I get hip to hip with him over the top, that's when we can easily make this rocker step cut, some type of move at the top of the break, and separate to win on my route. Now, the next trait of an elite wide receiver, you guys, is the ability to sell a double move. So anytime we're working a double move, this receiver's running kind of a unique double move. We call it a post and go. It's kind of like a slant and go. So he's going to be breaking to the post and then pushing up vertical on a go route. So to get this DB to crash on that post, got to do 3 things. Number 1, you have to commit your hips and your shoulders to the post. This DB is an off man coverage, so his eyes are going to be right on our hips as a wide receiver. Now, when we break to that post, hips and shoulders got to commit because that's what will get his eyes to commit. 2, can't change speed. We got to keep the same speed that I had into the post, out of the post, And then last but not least, I gotta maintain my strides. If we take choppy steps preparing for the go portion of this, that will not sell it. So elite wide receivers can do those three things. So let's play this full speed and we'll see. So he comes off the ball, breaks to the post, but you see how he's able to get that DB to crash. There's actually a burst of speed into it rather than a change in speed or rather than him slowing down. So if we play it back from the top, again, one more time, he bursts to the post, gets that DB to commit, hips, shoulders, and eyes, good speed, good stride will get you to win on every double move. Now the next trait of an elite wide receiver is that they can structure their releases, their moves based on the situation on the field. So this is Davante Adams running a slant route versus an inside shade man coverage guy. So just like that example with A.J. Brown in the very beginning, what release does he have to use? Diamond release, where he attacks this DB's outside shoulder, outside hip. The goal is to get him to open up to the fade, and then we cut back underneath. But he's in the red zone. He's actually on the 5-yard line. So me putting my head down 3 hard steps maybe isn't going to get that DB to bite because he's not threatened by a deep fade. But what is he threatened by? He's threatened by a goal line fade. So on this diamond release, what Davante Adams does is he does a great job peeking back over his inside shoulder to sell that goal line fade. So we'll play at full speed. So he comes off the ball here, and you see how his eyes peek to the inside. When your eyes peek back to that quarterback, that obviously makes him think that we are going to be running quick goal line fade. We'll play it again one more time. So he sets him up, 3 hard steps, but that little glance inside is how elite wide receivers can structure their routes based on where they're at on the field. Now the next thing that elite wide receivers can do, you guys, is they know how to, I guess you could say, not take the easy way out on their routes. So like this is Chase Claypool here from the Senior Bowl a few years back when he was obviously coming into the draft, and he has an inside shade off man coverage look, right? So it's still man-to-man. He's still trying to take away the inside route, the post, the dig. DB does not want us to run there, but he is running a 10-yard out. So what a lot of younger wide receivers will do, or a lot of, I guess you could say, more beginner wide receivers will do versus this look, is they'll just take off and go run the 10-yard out. And the problem with that, you guys, is that that's exactly what the DB wants us to do. He wants to take away the inside route, but also force us to the sideline. So if we just run it, he's right on our hip. We're cutting down the amount of space that the quarterback has. So if we watch it, Chase Claypool does something called stemming the DB, which is where he attacks him to the inside. So if we play this from the beginning, he starts to attack this DB's inside shoulder to move him, make him think that we are running some type of inside breaking route. We're going to play it again one more time. You see how the angle of his stem is right towards that DB's either midline or inside hip. This DB is actually giving him the inside. I feel like that DB should keep his leverage a little bit more, but still, that's where we'll move him off the platform and creates all of this space for our quarterback to lead us open. So elite wide receivers, you guys, don't just take the easy way out and run their route. Now the next thing that elite wide receivers can do, you guys, is drop their hips on a dime. So on routes like, I guess you could say, curls, comebacks, hitches, stop routes, the best wide receivers, you guys, are able to put the brakes on a dime. So this is an example of Garrett Wilson dropping his hips on an out route. Now this out route, he has outside shade press coverage, so DB obviously doesn't want us to run to the outside. It's just like inside shade, but flipped. So what Wilson does is he threatens his leverage to the outside, makes the DB move, he takes the inside release, but that DB's right on his hip. So we can't just try to run around him, he's got to drop to be able to slip underneath him. So we play at full speed, so he comes off the ball, he attacks his DB's leverage, but pay attention to those hips, how quickly he's able to drop. Because when we get to this position, you guys, so we're going to play it here. So when we get to this position right here, pause, go back to it just a little bit, right about like there, when we get that DB to commit his hips. When I'm on my route stem and I get that DB to commit his hips and shoulders vertical, the only way that I could get him to do that is by selling vertical. So I got to make sure that I'm running with good speed, I got to make sure my strides are long, and I got to make sure my hips and my shoulders are saying that I'm running this 9 route. So when we get him to commit, the only way I'm able to stop while getting him to commit is by being violent with my hips. So if we take this thing back, so let's play it from the beginning of the clip one more time. So when we play it, he comes off here. Look at how aggressive he drops his hips, you guys. We can't have a slow hip drop. When you're running with that type of speed, I can't drop into the brakes slowly because you're going to take a million steps. You got to think your chin is going straight to your knee like somebody's pulling a string, and that type of drop, and if you get your lower body to a 90-degree angle, will help you decelerate faster, make a sharper cut, and get separation from this DB. Now the next thing that a lot of wide receivers do at that elite level is add a little extra like sauce, if you will, to their releases off the ball. So we're looking at a wide receiver here do something something called a split release. So a split release is where you take your front foot and you move it out and your back foot goes straight up. So both feet essentially split in a way and they hit the ground at the exact same time. So when you split like that, we're trying to freeze a DB and then leave him. Now when you do that split, a lot of receivers are very slow with that split release. To create some speed, to create some twitch, what this receiver uses is something called a kick step with his back foot. So that's essentially where you kick behind your front foot with your back foot to create that speed, to create that explosion, and then he ultimately splits his feet. So let's play this thing full speed. So he kicks behind, then splits. And I know it happens fast. We're gonna play this a couple more times from the very beginning. Play it one more time. But again, yeah, the kick behind the back foot is a great way to kind of load up your hips so you could explode into your split release. So you can use that kick step, honestly, on any release, you guys, for speed, for explosion, and to get that DB on his heels. Now, the next thing that elite wide receivers can do, you guys, is manage a physical press coverage DB. I get a ton of questions from receivers asking about, like, what do I do if the DB lunges at me, gets physical? So we're gonna look at this example here from Justin Jefferson. He's using a split release, which is what we just went over, but I want you to pay attention to his upper body in this. Anytime that you're facing the DB who's gonna press, a lot of times receivers get uncomfortable and they stand straight up in the air, but Justin Jefferson maintains this like slight forward lean. His chest is slightly ahead of his waist so he can maintain this aggressive jam from a DB. So we play at full speed, so he comes off, but you see how he's able to just shrug it off, and that has everything to do with his pad level and with his body language. So we take this back from the very top. When he comes off the ball, again, he's not raising up. He's not shooting up on his releases. A lot of young receivers are so hesitant with contact, they will do that. Keep that slight forward lean and you will be just fine against a physical press coverage DB.